Good evening and welcome. America's Vice President J.D. Vance at 7 Lok Kalyan Marg at Prime Minister Modi's residence. A crucial meeting currently underway, followed by a dinner. Interestingly happening at the Prime Minister's residence and not at Hyderabad House, as is usually the case. Also remember, this is a very rare visit of a US sitting Vice President. The last time a Vice President of America came to India was in 2013 when Joe Biden came. It hasn't been too often that you've had high-profile official visits of the US Vice President. In 1953, Richard Nixon came as Vice President. There have been Vice Presidents who've come in the past, but for example, to attend the funeral of Rajiv Gandhi, Dan Quayle came in 1991. In 1984, George Bush came as Vice President to attend Indira Gandhi's funeral. So those were ceremonial visits, not bilateral talks. This is rare. It also shows the current state of relationship between India and the United States. And interestingly, he has quite a desi family dressed, as you see over there, in traditional Indian attire. So we'll capture the high-level engagement that's happening, the talks around trade and around the bilateral relationship, and also look at Usha Vance's desi connection. All that and more on the NewsTrack tonight.
Trump's Vice President meets Prime Minister Modi. Dinner, diplomacy and deals. First, in-person trade talks. Key meet amid tariff and trade wars. Can India-US thrash out a deal? That is a big focus on the NewsTrack.
Let me take you through the headlines. I'm tracking tonight. Prime Minister Modi holds crucial trade talks with US President at his residence in New Delhi. Prime Minister welcomes J.D. Vance and his family. Political storm over foreign raga. Rahul Gandhi alleges that the Election Commission is compromised during his speech at Brown University. BJP calls the Congress MP a traitor. Former Karnataka top cop's murder stuns India. Wife confesses to the crime. Police say the ex-DGP was stabbed when he was having lunch. China warns other nations against striking trade deals with the United States at Beijing's expense, vows countermeasures. China says Trump trade tactics will backfire. Pope Francis passes away at 88 after prolonged illness. The head of the Worldwide Catholic Church, no more. Prime Minister Modi and US Vice President J.D. Vance are currently holding talks at 7 Lok Kalyan Marg in New Delhi. The big focus is trade, given that this meet comes days after Donald Trump unleashed his tariffs. India and the United States have been working on a bilateral trade agreement. The critical question is, can the two countries thrash out a deal before fall?
The arrival of J.D. Vance in India on Monday morning kicks off a week of unprecedented pace in India-US trade talks. The US Vice President, a first-time visitor to the country of his wife's origin, has an itinerary packed with official meetings and personal time in Delhi, Agra and Jaipur. As the clock ticks on the 90-day extension in Trump's reciprocal tariffs, Vance will meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi, with the two expected to review progress made on the bilateral agenda outlined in February when Prime Minister Modi met President Donald Trump in Washington. Meanwhile, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is on a 5-day trip to the US. Though the minister is in the US for the spring meetings of the IMF, the World Bank and other multilateral engagements, bilateral talks with the US for a trade deal tops her agenda.
We are one of the countries which actively engaged with the new administration in the United States of America to see how best we can get a bilateral trade agreement done. Equally, the priority that we gave to engage with the government here is more than obviously seen with Prime Minister himself visiting the United States in February. You've had the Commerce and Trade Minister come. I've come here because I also have the IMF and World Bank meeting, but I'm scheduled to meet the Treasury Secretary, my counterpart here. So the keenness with which we are engaging with the US administration, even as I talk, I think the Vice President of the United States of America is in India. He will be engaging with the Prime Minister hopefully this evening or tomorrow.
There have been several top-level India-US engagements in the past 3 months, beginning with the Prime Minister's visit to the US in second week of February. This was followed by the Commerce Minister visiting US and then a reciprocal visit by the US Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, on 16th of March. A US trade delegation led by Assistant USTR Brendan Lynch was in India for 5 days in March. The latest are the visits of Finance Minister Sitharaman to the US and Vice President J.D. Vance to India. According to reports, India's chief negotiator for the deal, Rajesh Agarwal, will make a 3-day trip to the United States starting Wednesday. Meanwhile, there are reports that India and the US have finalized the terms of reference for the trade deal. This covers 19 chapters including tariffs, goods, non-tariff barriers, customs, facilitation, rules of origin and regulatory issues. The team led by Rajesh Agarwal will iron out differences on certain issues before formally launching negotiations for the proposed Indo-US Trade Pact.
The long and short of engaging with the US is not just for tariff-related, this reciprocal tariff-related matter, but in the interest of keeping an agreement in mind and in the interest of our largest trading partner with whom we need to have an agreement, we are working in order that by fall this year, we should at least have the first phase of the agreement signed.
The US remained India's largest trading partner for the 4th straight year, according to trade figures released on 15th of April. The two countries have agreed on trade hitting $500 billion in the next 5 years. The enhanced dialogue between India and US also comes at a time when trade and diplomatic tensions between China and the US have ratcheted to an all-time high. Not only do the bilateral talks focus on manufacturing opportunities in India, but also the status of India as an important strategic ally in combating the rising influence of China in the Indo-Pacific region. Bureau Report, Business Today Television.
To talk about Vice President Vance's visit to India and the significance of this being a part official, private visit, at a time when there hasn't been much of a track record of vice presidents from the US coming to India during their term. For example, Kamala Harris did not come, Mike Pence did not come, Joe Biden came when he was vice president, and Nixon came in the 50s. So it's not as if there have been too many of these official visits of American vice presidents. So there is significance there, that also relatively early in his term. To talk about all of this, we're joined by Arun Kumar Sharma. He is Senior Associate Chair on India and Emerging Economies at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. I have Professor Andrew Latham, Distinguished Scholar of International Security, Strategic Studies and the Political Economy at Lancaster College. I have Jayant Krishna, he's been the CEO and ED of NSDC, PM's Skill India Mission and a Senior Fellow at CSIS. And I have Kelly Meeman Hawk, Senior Counselor, McCarthy Associates, former US Foreign Service Officer, and has been the Representative Director of US Trade. So thank you to all our guests for joining us. I want to go across first to my colleague Shivani Sharma, who's tracking this live meeting taking place at this time at Prime Minister Modi's residence. Interesting choice to do this at the PM's residence rather than doing this at Hyderabad House, which would typically be the case. Give our viewers a sense of what you're picking up from within 7 LKM.
Rahul, as you were mentioning that this is not a usual meeting and it's not very frequently that we see a Vice President from United States visiting India. So this is a special meeting, a combination of a personal and an official meeting, and it's happening here at 7 LKM, the official residence of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and it's been over an hour when this meeting started at Prime Minister's residence. We've also seen the pictures of how Prime Minister Narendra Modi welcomed the three young children along with Usha Vance and the Vice President. So the meeting is on, and this is an effort from India for restructuring, re-strengthening the ties with Trump 2.0 administration and giving out a message that India is not only believing in people-to-people ties but leader-to-leader bond that is being strengthened out here in this particular meeting. And this visit, that is a 4-day long visit where we will see a lot of destinations of interest that have been chosen very significantly by the Vances, not only the Akshardham temple where they visited today and spent around 50 minutes out there, but they will be going to Jaipur, they will be visiting the majestic palaces, they will be going to Agra and Taj Mahal, along with this very important strategic partnership meeting that's going on here.
Shivani Sharma for joining us. Thank you very much. I want to go across to Arun Kumar Sharma for his sense of how Vice President Vance sees this visit, from what you've been able to pick up and from what we know in the public domain, the choices of meetings, the choices of visits, Agra, Jaipur, meeting with the Prime Minister officially in Delhi at his house. What do you make of the choices India has made in terms of calling him to the PM's residence, which again is in common, not to Hyderabad House, and the way Vice President Vance and his family have planned this visit out?
Thank you for the opportunity, Rahul. The three or four key points. First is, I think we can't overestimate the signaling importance of this visit and the way it's been designed. If you remember, when Prime Minister Modi came to Washington, he had a private meeting with Secretary Vance and his family, and he celebrated one of his sons, Vivek's birthday, together with the family. This is a very important follow-up to that original strategic engagement where not only the relationship from a country to country, leader to leader, but the fact that there is a strong recognition of this importance and the I would say the strategic importance of India to the United States is being leveraged with the fact that there is a personal connection of Vice President Vance to India with his family. And I think that is something that is also reflected in the fact that the president's sort of approach towards immigration and the entire presence of international contribution to the United States is very much aligned with what India has to offer. So his Secretary Tulsi Gabbard for National Security, his Director FBI Kash Patel are important signals of this whole continuum of basically seeing India and Indians as important contributors to this relationship. So that's the signaling importance, where the personal sort of connection has become very much a part of this official discussion. That's the first point. The second point is that Vice President Vance is a very different vice president compared to all other VPs, not only because of the fact of his visit to India, but he has represented the Trump administration in very important strategic situations in the Munich Security Conference, in the visit to Greenland, and so many other cases where, controversial or not, the fact is that he represents a very high-powered emissary of the Trump administration.
No, and he could possibly be because Donald Trump is already a second-term president in his late 70s. Vance is the most likely future face of the MAGA movement. So there is a lot of significance in that. I want to go across to Jayant Krishna on how much of this visit is Agra, the Akshardham temple, shopping at Janpath, the palaces at Jaipur, and how much of this is real business?
So, Rahul, primarily I agree it is more of a cultural immersion kind of a visit for his family and his three children who are half Indians, his wife Usha being an Indian. I think the Golden Trapezium, which is supposed to be the mecca of Indian tourism, comprising Delhi, Agra and Jaipur, as well as shopping at Janpath, then the Akshardham temple visit. I think all that is indicative of the fact that it's largely personal, but there's also a bilateral, color to it in the sense that he's addressing, at the Rajasthan International Center tomorrow, I believe, and also the bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister. I'm sure something like that happened before the dinner. So I think India attaches a lot of importance to its ties with the US, and that's the reason you had Minister Ashwini Vaishnav at the airport to receive him. And last time when Joe Biden was the vice president in Obama's earlier regime, and when he came to India, the then Vice President Mr. Ansari had hosted the dinner, and this time it's being done by the Prime Minister himself. So I think it is all indicative of the fact that we are very, very serious about our relationship.
Can I pause you just for a moment to basically talk our viewers through the visuals you see on your screen? This is the lawn at the Prime Minister's residence. I've had an opportunity to walk around those lawns, beautiful lawns, and you see some peacocks there as well. This is now, and this is the Prime Minister's signature move, where he holds a kid's ear, rubs the ear, holds the cheek, and here is the Prime Minister in the meeting room. The kids there as well, and that again is very interesting. You got the kids there in full display. Now, ordinarily, you would not have young children of this age in a formal kind of setting, but that's just the way this particular Trump administration has been. The kids, Elon Musk's kids, for example, Vance's kids, very much a fixture in, and the Prime Minister looks quite pleased. He's happy, he loves talking to kids, so he's very happy talking to these young children, but that typically doesn't happen. Kelly Hawk, before I ask you about trade, just the symbolism of the images that we're seeing, the kids there, Usha there, it almost seems in some part as, of course, part business, but also just a cultural immersion, a discovery of India, as it were.
I think that, you are seeing, as you noted, the integration of a number of the cabinet members' families, members of the team's families in the way that they're doing outreach. It does provide a personal touch. I think it's actually quite lovely, and especially just given the personal linkages that the vice president's wife has to the country, it makes it for a very unique interaction.
And the big difference, remember, with Kamala Harris was because she was on the Liberal Democrat side and had issues which she'd mentioned before she became vice president, not so much when she was vice president, but before she became vice president, her problems with the Modi government were quite clear, and therefore that would have been uncomfortable. But Usha Vance worked with a conservative judge. Her husband is vice president of the Republican Party, so there's an ideological fitment there as well. Professor Andrew Latham, these aren't usual scenes at 7 Lok Kalyan Marg at the Prime Minister's residence. Usha and the whole caboodle coming in large numbers for the Prime Minister's meeting. This is an official dinner, but you've got America's Vice President there out with his whole family meeting our Prime Minister. What are you making first just of the symbolism of what we're seeing, and then we'll dive into the substance?
Well, the symbolism is really interesting. Obviously, his wife Indian, etc., that's great. But the bigger picture right off the bat is twofold, at least. This is not just about a trade arrangement. This is about a geopolitical partnership to blunt and balance China in the Indo-Pacific, but also beyond the Indo-Pacific. And then I would say that's the geopolitical piece, the big picture internationally. And then I would say in terms of American domestic politics, the Republican Party is increasingly trying to attract the diasporic Indian population, which, by the way, in case people don't know, is the wealthiest demographic group in the United States, and has always traditionally drifted towards the Democratic Party, but now is up for grabs. And the Republican Party really wants to pull that Indian diaspora American demographic towards the Republican Party. So we've got some demographic politics going on. We've got some geopolitics going on. And all of this, I think, is reflected in the J.D. Vance visit, which is almost unprecedented.
Why do you think he's doing it, given the fact that the last American vice president who came on a not ceremonial, a formal visit was Richard Nixon way back in 1953? The others have come to attend some funeral as a representative of the president, but they haven't come for hardcore visits. It was Joe Biden who came in 2013, so it's not very frequent, these vice presidential visits.
That's exactly right. And so these are different and new times. And again, geopolitically, I think it's a signal that the U.S. wants to partner with India, not just on economics, but really wants to get together to counterbalance China in the Indo-Pacific. And then there's this other piece, which is domestic American politics, in which really trying to find ways for the Republican Party to entice Indian Americans, that whole huge, wealthy, strong demographic, to vote Republican and not a Democrat. And I think when you put those two things together, you can really understand why J.D. Vance, quite apart from, I'm sure, he just wants to take his kids to India. That's
sure.
wonderful.
If your wife is of Indian origin, then it always makes sense for the kids to come and see this country. So they're all dressed up in their bandgalas, they've got bundis, so they're very much trying to find their Indian roots. I want to go across to Kelly Hawk, because these are the images. The key substance is the trade negotiation on the bilateral trade agreement. You know, we've got an Indian delegation from the Commerce Ministry headed to the United States soon. You've worked very closely in the US Trade Representative Department as its director. Do you think it's possible that a trade deal comes through by fall, as the American president and the Indian Prime Minister have suggested that they'd like to? Or are there just too many complications to be able to make that happen?
I think the negotiations will be very complicated, as you say. There's a lot of sticky issues, agriculture probably being first and foremost among them. And while this visit is, as we were saying before, in its symbolism, very important, and we're seeing the images here, they really are beautiful images. I think that the substance of the visit of India's trade negotiating team to Washington this week is actually going to be more important. I think that is where we're going to see what the breadth and the scope of these discussions might be. I think there's not a huge amount of appetite here in Washington for comprehensive trade agreements by either party, frankly. But I do think that India has a bit of a leg up on many of the other countries that are trying to negotiate some sort of a settlement with respect to the reciprocal tariffs that were posed in early April.
Why do you think, from your lens, of course I have an Indian perspective on it, but why do you think from your lens, does India have a leg up over other countries trying to get the same deal through?
I think a couple of reasons. Number one, first and foremost, Prime Minister Modi came here and really launched the talks on the 13th of February, right? So that, already had India kind of first out of the chute, right, in discussing, how to really deepen our trade relations. And I think what the professor was commenting on before is absolutely right. India is mission critical to the United States in trying to find a way to counter India's influence in our economy. You already have seen so many companies investing in India to try to diversify their sourcing away from China. That's why the United States is one of the reasons why the United States is the number one, FDI source for India. So there's a number of reasons that make getting this right important for the United States. So I think these discussions will be very interesting to watch, and I'd like to think they'll be successful in the end.
Okay, you think these discussions are likely to be successful? Jayant Krishna, given the fact that particularly on issues like agriculture, India's position very different from the United States, do you think we will be able to find a solution? I just want to explain to our viewers. The US wants the Indian market to be opened up for American agricultural products. India says no, that's not easy because you have to take care of our farmers. America wants what they call distortions like minimum support price to be dealt with. India says we need to provide this support to our farmers because it's not easy to sustain yourself as a farmer because you don't get good commercial rates. So there's a lot of political minefields to navigate. Do you think we can get it done before fall?
So, Rahul, I feel, products like apples, corn, coffee, raisins, these kind of things where the duty is about 50% to 100%. I think there's some scope for reduction. May not be very radical because of the reasons that you just stated, that we have to take care of our farmer interest also. But products like whiskey and all that, which started from 150% and now we are hearing about it coming to 100%. I think there's a lot of scope for reduction there. But I think on agriculture products, the issues, the non-tariff issues also, which US has raised, which are, I believe, far more serious than the tariff issues. They have said that, India gives a lot of food subsidies, free energy, free crop insurance, fertilizer subsidy, and things like that, seed subsidy. So I think these kind of things really lower the cost of production, and therefore it's not in agreement with the WTO regime or whatever. It's not a fair trade practice. That's what they say. So I think, and these are very, very sensitive areas in India, over which elections are won and lost sometimes. So I don't think we have a lot of elbow space to remove these non-tariff barriers. But on tariff side, I think some reduction is possible on farm produce, as well as some of the other things which India imports from the US, and some of the things that we export to the US. I think that there is scope, and we have an early movers advantage when the Prime Minister started the engagement, followed by a long dialogue between Rajesh Agrawal, the Additional Secretary, Ministry of Commerce, and Brendan Lynch, the Assistant US Trade Representative. So I think, and again, Rajesh is going to US, I am told, in a couple of days' time. So I think things will work out. And also, Rahul, let's look at it. How many countries can the US afford to antagonize? So somewhere I also feel that, among the Committee of Nations, there will be few friends US would like to retain. And there's a lot of mutuality in the relationship between US and India. And I see a distinct possibility. There will be some stumbling blocks. It will not be a cakewalk. But I see that, there'll be some hope and some distinct possibility of this, if not, surely not the FTA, but the bilateral trade agreement seeing the light of the day. Let's not forget, in today's day and age, Rahul, countries do not necessarily get what they deserve. They get what they negotiate. And, India has the early movers advantage, and I see a lot of hope there.
Okay. J.D. Vance's India visit was crucial in terms of diplomacy and deals, but the other focus has been the Vance family. His kids, Ivan, Vivek, and Mirabel, have the Indian internet in a chokehold with their desi avatar and candid moments. Take a look.
The Vance kids stole the show as they touched down in New Delhi. The boys, Ivan and Vivek, were dressed in kurta and pajamas. And little Mirabel took baby steps down in a royal blue ethnic ensemble. Her dad, the US Vice President, hurried up to carry her in his arms. On a sweltering summer day, the Vance kids squinted and braved the heat. Greeting Minister Ashwini Vaishnav, and even playing with the medals of an Indian Air Force officer who was part of the welcome party. Then it was time for a traditional treat, a Bharatnatyam performance to welcome the Vances. The kids soaked in the dance before turning around to pose for a family photo. Next stop, Delhi's iconic Akshardham Temple. The Vance family were welcomed with rose and marigold garlands. The kids held on to their parents' hands as they posed together, with little Mirabel chewing on to what appeared to be a band or a thread tied around her wrist. J.D. Vance in his thank you message wrote that the kids in particular loved the Akshardham Temple. J.D. Vance met Prime Minister Modi last in Paris on the sidelines of the AI Action Summit, where Ivan and Vivek also had an audience with Narendra Modi. The Vance brothers were casually dressed in jeans and t-shirts, with Vivek looking a little unimpressed. Before arriving in India, this video of the Vance children had the internet abuzz. The boys seen wielding their toy swords as they departed Rome, and a sleeping Mirabelle being carried up the plane by Daddy Vance. Daughter Mirabelle had turned heads at the Trump inauguration too, rocking fingers and band-aids. The toddler was healing America with some disruptive finger fashion. The other two Vance kids clearly went viral with these antics, playing tabla on their parents' heads. While Vance slouched across the front of the deck, the candid moment brought smiles to an otherwise buttoned-up evening. For a high-stakes diplomatic visit, the Vance kids have the pride of place. Bureau Report, India Today.
This isn't usual in diplomacy, Professor Latham, to have kids so front and center as Musk did, Vance does right now. You know, even in past American administrations, whether it was, say, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, many of the recent presidents have maintained this distance between what is official and formal and what is personal. Here, it's all intertwined.
Yeah, well, I think it's basically boils down to this, making this relationship human as opposed to simply geopolitical or economic. And it was, I have to say, I found it lovely that on the one hand, I could say he was exploiting his kids and his wife. On the other hand, I would say that it was just a nice way of connecting these two countries, not just geopolitically or economically, but in human terms. And I have two kids around the same age. It just worked, and I think it's going to work diplomatically, geopolitically, etc. And in terms of domestic politics too, I think it's going to work. And it was, to my mind, really nice to see the wife, kids, looking both Indian and American. I thought it worked.
You know, and in many ways, Arun Kumar Sharma, this is the special relationship between India and the United States. You know, my brother lives and works in the US. He's an American citizen, married to an American. So this is very common, this idea that, you know, these two countries have deeper personal ties, and that's really one of the fulcrums of this relationship.
Indeed, it is. I can say that, you know, both my girls are married to American boys. So, but that aside, the fact that this opportunity showcases to the world the integration and the contribution, most importantly, of the Indian diaspora to this country. You know, this is a country built on immigration right since its formation. And the fact that all the contributions that have been made by the Indian diaspora has contributed to this relationship in commerce, in science, in technology, and now increasingly in politics, as Professor was saying earlier. And I think the fact that this is now in front and center in the official discourse, I think can be only helpful and has only upside, in my view, going forward. I think the commercial discussions and the trade and tariff discussions will take place because, as I've said before on this panel, both countries are going to pursue their national interest. There are going to be sticky issues. There are going to be challenges. We may or may not reach a comprehensive agreement. We probably not. But we will probably make a deal that will essentially perhaps kick the can down the road on the more sticky issues, but really get things done that will be done. And having this kind of format and having this kind of setting for having those negotiations take place it certainly has strong upside in setting the tone as we go through this difficult sort of discussion in the next coming months.
Okay. All eyes are also on the Second Lady of the United States and what she does and even wears. Usha Vance is known for her effortless and elegant style. She touched down in Delhi dressed in a long red dress. The Vance kids went desi in Delhi. Will Usha also embrace her Indian roots over the next couple of days?
Usha Vance, the first Indian-American second lady, arrived in New Delhi, turning the diplomatic runway into her personal catwalk. Her bold red dress, a sleeveless high-neck maxi-length pencil silhouette, was a nod to her Indian heritage, where red symbolizes prosperity and celebration. The look was polished with a crisp white blazer, exuding modern sophistication. Her minimal accessories and relaxed side-parted hairstyle kept the focus on the dress's fiery hue. Fashion critics are calling it a seamless blend of East meets West elegance. And a touch of romance too, as she ensured her dress matched with her husband, Vice President Vance's tie.
I think she was dressed impeccably. She was in an A-line red dress with an A-line shift red dress, and she's in a white blazer. I think red is such a significant color both for America and for us. And she was complimentary to her husband, who was in a staple uniform navy blue suit along with the red tie. So I think they coordinated well, and as an airport look, I thought that was extremely comfortable and chic of her.
The kids too didn't disappoint. They stole hearts in traditional Indian wear, handpicked to honor their mother's Telugu roots.
I thought it was very respectful that her kids were dressed in Indian outfits, from a kurta pajama to a lehenga choli, and it seems like an attempt to make them feel a part of this culture since she's herself from India.
Usha Vance has always been a picture of elegance and poise. Just last week, Usha and J.D. Vance attended Good Friday Mass at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, and Usha exuded grace in a tailored black midi dress with long sleeves and a modest neckline. 2025 has clearly been Usha Vance's year to shine. At the presidential inauguration, she turned heads in a custom peony pink Oscar de la Renta cashmere coat, paired with a tea-length dress and mauve suede boots. The look, accessorized with floral pearl earrings and a sleek bun, was dubbed demure royalty by fashionistas. In a rare nod to Indian designers, Usha stunned at the pre-inauguration candlelight dinner in a violet one-shoulder Gaurav Gupta gown. The sculptural pleated design with a daring slit showcased her ability to blend heritage with high fashion.
There was a very nice, elegant, formal look. Gaurav Gupta is known to do these very elaborate looks for occasions, especially for red carpet. She carried it off very well, though we've also noticed that she hasn't been wearing too many Indian designers. Gaurav Gupta is the only one that we've seen on her.
At the inaugural ball, Usha sparkled in a strapless sapphire degrade gown by Reem Accra, featuring embroidery and chantilly lace. Paired with diamond studs and a low bun, the look screamed timeless glamour. Netizens can't stop gushing over Usha Vance's style, from ex-posts calling her trending and smashing to comparisons with First Lady Melania Trump. Usha's monochromatic clean-cut style is redefining political fashion. Her salt and pepper hair, often styled in a sleek bun, adds a youthful yet sophisticated edge.
She's a very classic dresser. She's super simple, she's super elegant, and she keeps it very simple and I would say minimal. And I think she wears simpler cuts. She's not known to experiment too much, but she does experiment a bit with color. And I like how she simply dresses, not bringing in too much attention, but that maybe just be her personality as well.
As Usha Vance continues her global journey, her fashion choices speak louder than words, blending heritage, modernity, and quiet confidence. Whether in a fiery red dress or a structural gown, she's proving that style is the ultimate diplomacy. The only time we've seen Usha rock a desi look is a wedding, when she wore a traditional Andhra sari. Even her visits to her family with Vance have been casual and comfy. So we are definitely counting on more desi flair in the days to come. With Kshitija Gosavi, Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, let's for a moment focus on the trade deal between India and the United States. Arun Sharma, is that likely to be discussed, you think, at any level during the bilateral conversation between the Prime Minister and Vance, or would they more likely at this moment leave it to the officials from the Commerce Secretary who are more directly involved in this?
I think there's going to be definitely a reference to that. It was already stated in the public pronouncements before this meeting. And so I think but I think the importance of that discussion is setting the context. I think the purpose of this meeting, in fact, the timing and also the timing of Finance Minister's visit to Washington is not by accident. Definitely it is intended to set the right tone. Of course, the details will be discussed at the technical level, as was outlined by the initial reference at the newscast beginning. And so definitely it will be something that is there to set the tone. And it's important to set the tone because I think the issues are real. And I think if I know the past track record of Prime Minister Modi, he's an excellent visionary and an excellent, I would say, has a great understanding of the empathy of what resonates and what does not. So I think he's going to make very clear, to the extent that I can guess, on what are the things that are kind of difficult zones and where I think we can make progress. And I think that kind of practical attitude, if the context is set, I think will be very helpful. And this meeting is going to be very helpful for the more challenging negotiations that Mr. Agarwal and his counterparts are going to have in the latter part of this week in Washington.
Kelly Hawk, your sense of the level of flexibility in the United States when it comes to thrashing out the nuances of this bilateral trade agreement? Because when I spoke to Secretary Latnik during the India Today conclave, he said there must be one flat rate across all products, and when Indian ministers and trade officials heard it, they said it's impossible. Now there seems to be a realization that, okay, we need to go product by product, category by category. Is there a my way or the highway kind of approach, or do you think the Americans also, when it actually comes to a hardcore negotiation, will be more willing to be flexible?
I think that you're not seeing a lot of flexibility coming out of this administration when it comes to their approach towards trade. What I would anticipate is that Vice President Vance will be sending very strong signals in his meetings with respect to the commitment that President Trump has to addressing perceived inequalities in our trade relationships, if that means trade deficits versus surpluses, if that means tariff peaks. This concept of reciprocity is something that's very important to him. And I imagine that Vice President Vance will be communicating that quite forcefully. One thing that I think will also probably come up, I would not be surprised that in the composition of this deal, if we see non-trade issues also creeping in. Obviously, if you look at the joint statement between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi from February, there's a number of other issues that are addressed as well. There's defense, there's energy, et cetera. So I think that we'll see some of those issues coming in, and it wouldn't surprise me if those are also discussed in the context of the meetings that take place this week.
So we'll have more for you on the Vance India visit all through the day tomorrow. Of course, tonight as well, as more visuals come in after this dinner gets over, and then they leave for the airport to head to Jaipur. We'll bring you more images and information about what transpired in these meetings. For the time being, I want to thank our guests. Okay, I've just received information of the first set of images of that bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Modi and America's Vice President J.D. Vance. We'll have it out on your screen in just a moment from now. But those are the images currently on your screen of India's Prime Minister Modi meeting with America's Vice President J.D. Vance. This is after the welcome at the porch of 7 Lok Kalyan Marg. This is the more formal set of engagement. You see India's Foreign Minister Jaishankar there. You saw also Ajit Doval, the National Security Advisor, and the American delegation being welcomed by the Indian Prime Minister. And this is the corridor at 7 Lok Kalyan Marg leading into the Prime Minister's office, which is where this meeting is taking place. And interestingly, you're just about to see Shaktikanta Das there as well. He's now Principal Secretary in the Prime Minister's office. So he's there in the right corner of the set of images that you just saw. So this is the bilateral meeting, and this will be followed then by dinner at 7 Lok Kalyan Marg. And again, as I said, this is rather rare because most of these meetings typically happen at the Hyderabad house and not really so much at the Prime Minister's residence. That's at least been the typical fashion. So Gaurav Sawant joins us, heads up strategic affairs coverage for the India Today group. Gaurav, you've been to many of these banquets, state lunches, dinners, working engagements at Hyderabad House. Interesting that they've picked and chosen to do this at 7 Lok Kalyan Marg and not at Hyderabad House this time.
And Rahul, that again sends out a very important signal to people in India, to people in the United States of America, that the Prime Minister has invited the US Vice President to his house. It's a more personal setting. And especially the children are also able to then come in. The children are also able to interact with the Prime Minister. It's an attempt to show that J.D. Vance is also coming home or to his wife's house, his wife's country. So that sends out a signal of proximity. Point 1. Point 2, Rahul, the Prime Minister took them around his house, showed them where the birds are fed, showed them around the garden at Lok Kalyan Marg, and then we're just waiting to hear and learn of the gifts that are given, because that's also something that takes Indian culture forward, traditional stories. So, for example, stories of the Panchtantra. The Prime Minister in the past has given them tales of the Panchtantra for them to read and to reconnect with Indian culture. He's given them, toys, wooden toys that are made in India. So that's again sending out two signals. One, made in India articraft, made in India toys, and then exporting them, something that India has been trying to do in a very big way, export made in India toys across the world. And then, of course, this very important, bread and butter part of that meeting, the entire leadership on the Indian side. You pointed out the NSA, the External Affairs Minister, Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister, India's ambassador to the United States of America, and the American side, their trade delegation in these talks. So the higher direction for the trade negotiations, messages that India may have for the American president, a message from the American president for the Indian Prime Minister, all of that interaction takes place now before they break off for dinner, and then US Vice President heads to Jaipur, Rahul.
And give our viewers also, Gaurav, a sense of Jaipur and Agra and what to expect. Of course, the Rambagh Palace, going to Amer Fort, going to Taj Mahal. So this is a lot of optics apart from the substance of the bilateral dialogue.
The substance of the bilateral dialogue happening now. Tomorrow, the US Vice President J.D. Vance also addresses the Rajasthan International Center. So he is addressing a gathering there. His thought process, his thinking, the American thinking on relationship with India. And trade is one aspect of it. Trade is just one part of it. US President Donald Trump will be coming to India for the Quad Summit. India is hosting the Quad Summit this year because America wanted to host it last year because Joe Biden in his final year as president, wanted to host it before he left the White House or he left as president of America. So India graciously said, sure, go ahead, do it. Now this time India is hosting it. So US President Donald Trump comes to India for Quad Summit. So there'll be an interaction on Quad. Indo-Pacific, very big on India's agenda, very big on the US agenda. As you know better, under Trump, Quad has been given a major fillip. Other Quad heads of state and government will also be coming to India. So trade, high-end technology is something that India is very keen on in terms of invest in India or make in India, transfer that technology to India. Defense deals are something that they're really big on.
Gaurav, stay with me for a moment, because I've just received from the Prime Minister's office the statement put out at the end of this bilateral dialogue, and I'll get our viewers to get a sense of what's in this statement, and then Gaurav can help analyze it. Basically, following up on their meeting in February, PM Modi and Vice President Vance reviewed progress in bilateral meetings and bilateral relations. They welcomed the progress in the India-US bilateral trade agreement and efforts towards enhancing cooperation in energy, defense and strategic technologies. The two leaders exchanged views on various regional and global issues of mutual interest. Prime Minister Modi conveys greetings to President Trump and looks forward to his visit to India later this year. In some ways, Gaurav, also setting the tone for President Trump's visit to India. And from what we can make of President Trump, he would really want for that bilateral trade agreement to be done before he comes to India, because he's the big showman, the big deal maker, and nothing, I suppose, would give him greater joy than to come to India to sign this bilateral trade agreement.
The first phase of it, indeed. That is something that India and the United States would certainly want to push because there is this 90-day deadline or window in which they have to work this out. And that is why they've spoken of how India and the US are trying to leverage the strength to make America great again and visit Bharat and Vikasit Bharat 2047. So both India and the United States have their agenda set. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Vice President Vance reviewed and positively assessed the progress of various areas of bilateral cooperation. And this is very, very important. The bilateral trade agreement focused on the welfare of the people of two countries. Likewise, they noted continued effort towards enhancing cooperation in energy, defense, strategic technology and other areas. So Rahul, we have a broad framework on how these two countries are moving forward. So that bilateral trade agreement, as you very rightly pointed out, is extremely significant. They would want to sign it by fall, the first part of it or the first phase of it, and then move forward. Or for India is very keen to have critical technology to be made in India, for that cooperation to be enhanced. That is something India is really looking forward to. Also, Rahul, the engagement in Indo-Pacific, how does that become more intense? While you have all the four countries doing HADR and disaster relief together, or healthcare is huge, cancer research is huge, militarily, the Malabar series of exercises, will they also be enhanced to the next level is something that is being looked forward to, Rahul.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Gaurav, for joining us. This is where I wrap up the NewsTrack tonight. Rajdeep Sardesai comes up next with News Today. I'll see you tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Till then, from all of us here on the NewsTrack team, goodbye and good night.